Do you have a dream car? Mine is the Lucid Air. Are you intrigued by electric vehicles? The Lucid Air EV has been called the best driving car in the world. And the Lucid Air Sapphire is certifiably the fastest production car in the world. Listen to Lucid Driver Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts or at luciddriver.buzzsprout.com.
Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyofacation.com or enter to win a free cruise for two. Again, www.thejoyofacation.com. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on the air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul. And this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I'm delighted to welcome Ralph DeFalco, a former U.S. Navy captain turned cruise ship enrichment speaker who brings a rare blend of global experience and storytelling to audiences at sea. As a Smithsonian Journeys Expert, as well as a speaker with Ritz-Carlton and Viking, DeFalco lectures on geopolitics, maritime history, and world affairs, often while sailing through the very regions he's discussing. With a 5-decade career spanning 5 continents, including time on the Pentagon staff of the Director of Naval Intelligence, he offers travelers deeper context on the destinations they're visiting, from strategic waterways to culturally rich ports. His government career also informs his novel, The Counterfeit, a geopolitical thriller imagining a fractured future shaped by global conflict. Listeners, let's get to know Ralph DeFalco and hear about his life as a cruise ship speaker, how travel shapes our understanding of world events, and the stories behind the ports he's explored. Welcome, Ralph, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Well, it's a delight to be here, Paul. Thank you for having me.
So how you doing?
I am doing absolutely terrific. Just returned from a wonderful cruise aboard the Ritz-Carlton yacht Luminata. I spent some time in Japan and South Korea, and it was an absolutely terrific experience.
Oh man, we got to come back to that. I just had Ritz-Carlton Yacht Club on the show. Maybe, I don't know, about a month ago. And I was just, and I suspect some of my listeners were as well. I was just drooling listening to that. And so I'm going to come back to that and ask you to tell us all about that.
I'd be happy to do that. It was a wonderful experience.
Good. So before we talk about your interesting seafaring life, as well as your fascinating background and your book, tell our listeners some basics about yourself. Where you're from, where you live, family, anything you would like to share.
Well, Paul, I'll tell you, I like to tell people that I am a native of the Chicagoland area and a big Chicago Cubs fan. I spent 40 years in the greater Chicagoland area before moving to Washington, D.C. to pursue my career in national security intelligence. And I am now living on Amelia Island, Florida. And people on the island know me quite well. They enjoy seeing me tooling around the island. I drive a very unusual car. I drive a 1976 Cadillac Eldorado convertible. That's
that stands out a little bit.
It does. It's bright red with a white interior, so everybody knows when I'm driving around the island.
I live in Amelia too, except I live in Amelia, Virginia.
Okay. What is it? Well, my wife and I are just delighted to be down here in Amelia Island. It's a great jumping off point for us for much of the travel that we do. We're not that terribly far from the airport in Jacksonville, which is a nice little regional hub. So from Amelia Island, we have a great opportunity to travel and get where we need to go. So it's a wonderful island, terrific people down here, and we do not miss Chicago winters.
Yeah, I spent 9 years in Florida. I was in the Fort Myers and Naples area.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
So talk about your life, and it was a full one. Talk about your life before cruise ships and how those experiences inform your talks at sea.
Well, Paul, as you know, I was very fortunate to spend many years in support of our country as a national security intelligence officer. I spent 25 years in the U.S. Navy, both reserve and active, and
Let me
subsequent.
jump in and say thank you for your service. I'm a vet, but not nothing like you.
No, every vet has performed a worthwhile service for our country, and I thank you, sir, for your service as well. I like to tell people that serving in the United States military was both a privilege and a pleasure for me. I had an opportunity to work with tremendous people, talented people, dedicated people, and it's refreshing in this day and age to go into a work environment and find that kind of dedication on display every single day. So, as I said, I spent 25 years in the Navy and then another 18 years as a senior civilian in the Pentagon. And during the course of my career, spanning 5 decades and 5 continents, I had an opportunity to see quite a bit of the world. And I think that and my experience as an intelligence officer gives me some pretty unique perspectives when I go to sea now as a cruise ship enrichment speaker, having seen firsthand many of the places in the world that regularly appear in the news. I think I have a unique perspective to share with people.
Oh, I'll bet you do. Hey, I have a question. I maybe kind of it's a curiosity question, maybe kind of a frivolous question. I mean, it's an important topic. Were you working in the Pentagon when 9/11 happened?
Uh, I was not. I was actually on active duty, but I was stationed at Fort Sheridan, Illinois, at the Joint Reserve Intelligence Center there. And oddly enough, on 9/11, I was teaching a class to new intelligence officers on basic analytical techniques. And when the attacks occurred, one of the other officers that I worked with came in and gave me a heads up that something had happened in New York. We got into the break room after class, the morning class, and saw the second aircraft hit the second tower. So it was quite a shattering experience. I regret to say that I lost one of my Naval War College classmates
Oh, wow.
in the
Sorry.
attack on the Pentagon. Yes, he
Sorry.
was a yeah, great guy. But
In the Pentagon, not at the World Trade Center. So
yeah, he
okay.
lost his life at the Pentagon when the
Okay.
Pentagon was struck.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I actually got to Washington a year later,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and at that time, as you well know, tremendous efforts by contractors and by the Navy and the officials at the Pentagon to rebuild that area of the Pentagon. It was back up and operational by the time I got to DC.
Wow.
Got to DC.
Wow.
Remarkable.
So let's shift gears and talk about cruising. Normally, I would go back to the beginning, to your first cruise, but I want to hear about that cruise on the yacht.
On a Ritz-Carlton Luminata.
Yeah.
We had a fabulous time. As you know, and you've mentioned earlier, I'm a cruise ship enrichment speaker, and Ritz was kind enough to bring me aboard to be a speaker on this trip. So we began our trip in Tokyo and sailed in the Japanese home island area and made a circuit all the way down to Busan, Korea, South Korea, and returned to Tokyo. And I did that circuit twice for a
Wow.
total of 24 days, and it was an exceptional opportunity, absolutely exceptional. The Ritz-Carlton Luminata is well staffed, well appointed. I can't say enough good things about the ship and about its staff. The people there are genuinely friendly. They make extra efforts to make sure that you're having everything you need and a terrific time aboard ship. The restaurants are terrific. The food is excellent. The excursions ashore are very well planned. From top to bottom, it was a terrific experience. And I think my presentations were very well received.
Now, you don't recall meeting on Ritz-Carlton a representative from the cruise line, Kathy Liu?
We'll be right back.
The Joy Vacation by Dream Vacations invites you to join us on a bucket list adventure to Africa. We're going to Kenya and Egypt for 14 days, April 10th through April 24th, 2027. A week in Kenya, including safaris, and a week in Egypt, including the pyramids and a 4-day Nile River cruise. This adventure includes air from the U.S., all transfers, all accommodations, private tours, and many meals. $5,000 to $5,500, depending on air, per person. Double occupancy. Only $250 per person deposit due at booking. The remainder is not due until late 2026. For a detailed itinerary, online brochure, and to book, email me at pthornton, THORNTON, pthornton at dreamvacations.com.
I have not met Kathy Liu, but I would look forward to that in the future. I'm sure if Kathy gets on ships, the Ritz-Carlton cruisers, yachts on a regular basis, we will eventually bump into each other.
Yeah. She's the person that I had on a few weeks ago to talk about Ritz-Carlton.
Well, it was a great opportunity, as I say, and had an opportunity, I think, to give some presentations that were very well received. I'll surprise you and tell you that of the presentations I gave, all of them were rooted, of course, in history.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them were rooted in the 19th and 20th century history of Japan and South Korea. But the presentation that was really, really well received, believe it or not, was a presentation on the 150-year history of baseball in Japan.
Wow.
So people really got a kick out of that lecture, and it includes some fascinating aspects from history. Babe Ruth, for example, did a tour of Japan with American League baseball players in the 1930s, and it was a mob scene when Babe Ruth showed up in Tokyo. And it's fascinating little tidbits like that, I think, that inform so much of what a cruise ship enrichment speaker can do, sharing little known facts that are highly relevant to the places and the destinations that you're seeing, and the folks on the ships get an opportunity to visit.
Yeah, I had never heard of about Babe Ruth traveling to Japan in the 30s, but it's funny because things have changed 180 degrees, because today we have several Japanese Babe Ruths in the major leagues. I mean, they can hit and hit. They can pitch and hit home runs just like Babe did.
You are absolutely right. We have a great two-way player in the major leagues now, and with the Los Angeles Dodgers, Shohei Ohtani. He hits, he pitches. He's the first player in history to have hit 50 home runs and stole 50 bases in one season.
Yeah, and is quite the pitcher.
Oh yes, he's an excellent pitcher as well. So he's the the first truly two-way player since the Babe played the game. And as a result of that, he makes $700 million for his performances.
So what made you do a lecture about the history of baseball in Japan on the ship?
Well, I'll tell you, I have an opportunity when I'm a cruise ship enrichment speaker really to select my own topics
Mm-hmm.
within range of what the line expects. Typically, they look for lectures, presentations to be geared towards the destinations, especially to the ports. And in my previous work with the people at the Ritz, I outlined three different lectures, and I proposed to them lectures basically on 20th century history in Japan and South Korea, which they accepted and really embraced.
Mm-hmm.
And about a week before the cruise, they came back to me and they said, we might have another sailing day and we're going to need another lecture. We're going to need another presentation. And I said, holy smokes, this was a week before we left. I said, what in the world could I prepare and do the research on in a week? So I fell back on one of my passions, which is baseball, and decided that I would talk about baseball in Japan. And I thought I would surprise people with this presentation. I assumed that most people would think that baseball did not arrive in Japan until after the war, that it was something that a GI brought to Japan in 1945. And I was pleasantly surprised to learn that the very first baseball game in Japan was actually played in 1872.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I would have been the former. I would have thought that it started after the war.
Yes, yes. It got a real great shot in the arm after the war because many American players on a goodwill tour went to Japan in 1949 and then again in 1950. It was a group that was led by a former National League batting champion by the name of Frank Lefty O'Doul. And Lefty O'Doul had a very close personal friend, a young man that he coached when Lefty was the manager of the minor league team, the San Francisco Seals. And that young man accompanied him on a trip to Japan in 1950, was a terrific hit. The young man's name was Joe DiMaggio.
Wow.
And he brought along with him Marilyn Monroe.
Get out.
Yes, yes, he brought Marilyn. And here's the funniest part of that story. And people on the Ritz-Carlton yacht really enjoyed this. I had a photograph that I was able to share with them. A large banner was erected over the port of entry when Lefty and his entourage arrived. And Marilyn Monroe was there, Joe DiMaggio was there, Lefty was there. But the big banner over the entrance said, "Welcome, Lefty O'Doul." And below that, Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio.
Now, let's have a little fun competition. What lecture was more popular, the history one or the baseball one?
Well, it's interesting on cruise ships, and what I've discovered this to be almost a universal truth. The first presentation that you give is generally well attended, and if you are offering topics of interest, if you can engage with the audience, then you'll find the second presentation is even better attended. And then by the time you do a third or a fourth one, you generally have pretty good sized crowds, depending on what's available aboard ship in terms of their theater size or the room size where you're presenting. But I think
as word of mouth gets around.
You've got it, Paul. That's exactly what happens. It's word of mouth. One of the challenges for a cruise ship enrichment speaker, I think, is to connect with the audience. And as you well know, and I've told people this aboard ship, many people took history classes in school and were bored to death. And I want to avoid that in my lecture. So I tell people that the study of history is not about memorizing dates. It's not about the names of famous people. It's about events. It's about events in the context of their times and how those events shape the world we live in today. So, with that preamble, I found that once I position these events as the basis of my presentation, people are very alive to understanding how events 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago actually shaped the world we live in today, and more critically, perhaps, impact what they're seeing on these cruises and the places they're visiting.
Still on cruising, let's go back to the beginning. Talk about your introduction to cruising as a passenger.
Well, it's a very interesting story. My mother, who is now 93 years old, many years ago, at least 2 decades ago, had mentioned repeatedly that she would like to travel to Alaska. She would like to visit Alaska. So one day I reached out to Princess Cruises and I booked 2 staterooms, one for my wife and I, and one for my mother on a Princess cruise through the inner passage of Alaska. And I called my mother a few minutes after making that booking and I said, Mom, are you still interested in going to Alaska? And she said, Oh, yes, I've always wanted to visit Alaska. That would be fascinating. I said, Well, you have about 2 hours to decide whether or not you're going to go on a cruise to Alaska in the next in 90 days because I just bought you a stateroom aboard the Princess Cruise Line.
Oh, how wonderful.
So
And I know she was just overjoyed.
yeah, she was thrilled after first saying she couldn't possibly go. She's way too busy. She finally relented and she had a terrific time. So that was my first cruise uh, on a ship that gave us a tremendous opportunity to visit places that ordinarily would have taken weeks to get to in Alaska. And the cruise ship, I think, is an opportunity to do exactly that. It's an opportunity to travel in a way that takes you from destination to destination, not only in comfort, but with some great speed as well.
Wow, Alaska as your first cruise.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was quite a bucket list trip for us. We went to Alaska, but we had done many cruises before that. But it's still on the bucket list because now bucket list item is to go back,
You get
go back to Alaska. So
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. So that was my introduction, Paul, and my wife's introduction really to to luxury cruising and to coupling cruising with just tremendous opportunities for destination visits.
So your initial impression was a positive one.
Oh, absolutely. There was no question in our minds after doing that cruise that we were going to do it again. Life sometimes gets in the way. My career, my deployments overseas kind of interrupted some of that. But after we retired 5 years ago, we immediately jumped back into touring and cruising and really have never looked back.
Hmm. Do you have a particular favorite ship or favorite line?
Well, I'll tell you, Paul, it's an interesting experience. Always the last line and last ship I've been on is my favorite. Because the memories and the experiences are so fresh in your mind, you can't help but enjoy what you've just experienced. But I think cruise lines are terrific because they offer something for everyone. We've been on expedition cruise ships. For example, my trip to Antarctica. We've been on expedition ships where we've had opportunities to board Zodiacs and go ashore. We've been on luxury cruise ships that take us to some absolutely fabulous ports of call where we get to go ashore and experience some of the great port capitals of the world and cities of the world that way. So I think every cruise line, every cruise ship offers you something unique, something advantageous. We've done river cruises, we've done transatlantic cruises. We've just done this tremendous cruise with Ritz-Carlton in Japan in the waters of South Korea. So I think your question is a terrific one, but having a favorite, I think depends an awful lot on what your expectations are and what the nature of the actual cruise is, from river cruising to open ocean cruising to ports of call. It's geared in many ways by what your expectations are for the cruise.
Wow, river cruise, transatlantic cruise, luxury cruise. You've done it all. I've only been on one river cruise. I loved it. In fact, I did a episode on my all-time 10 favorite cruises, and the one river cruise that I did was number one. To talk about river cruising, how you like that clearly because you mentioned it. What did you like about river cruising?
Well, river cruising is unique in many ways because you are in the heart of the countries you're visiting. My wife and I have done the Rhine River cruise. We've done a cruise on the Danube. We've cruised the Netherlands and the Low Countries. And earlier this year, we sailed up the Mekong River to the Lake Tonle Sap and visited Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam. So each one of those experiences immerses you not only in the history and the country itself, but also in the culture. You can't help but get immersed in the culture when you're on a river. And when you're on the river and you do your excursions ashore, you are in really the heart of a country. Most rivers are major arteries, not only of commerce and of business today, but also of culture. So it's incredible to be on, for example, the Mekong River and see sampans going past loaded with fruits and vegetables. It's amazing to see the fishing boats out and the Mekong. And it's just incredible when you're on the Danube River, for example, to sail through a place like Budapest at night when the lights of the Parliament building are on and experience what people experience who live in those countries and on those rivers experience. So, yeah, I'm a great fan of river cruising. And it's an opportunity, as I said, to get right into the heart of the countries you want to visit.
When the one time I was on a river cruise, we did have a fair amount of lectures, mostly from people who came on board. Have you ever done any storytelling on river cruises?
Well, actually, it's interesting that you mentioned that because that's really how I got started with the cruise ship enrichment. I was aboard a Smithsonian sponsored cruise on the Danube River and met several of the enrichment speakers. We got to be very friendly, and they suggested to me that given my background, my experience, the writing that I've done, that I might be a very good fit with the Smithsonian and join the team of Smithsonian experts. And you know that phrase, 6 degrees of separation, Paul? Well, that's exactly what happened. It was a friend of a friend of a friend, kind of a referral. And before you knew it, after that trip, I was actually being interviewed on the phone by people at the Smithsonian who expressed an interest in having me join the team. And that's how I started in the cruise ship enrichment and my connection with the Smithsonian.
Yeah, I mentioned in the intro that you're a Smithsonian Journeys expert. Tell us what that means.
Well, Smithsonian Journeys experts, Paul, come from a variety of backgrounds, but what they have in common, I think, is one thing. What they have in common is a love of travel and the ability to share their knowledge and their experiences with others. You have experts in everything from art history to architecture to world history, current affairs, zoology. They run the gamut. And by and large, these are individuals who are experts in their field, either as academics, because of the research and writing they've done, because they were journalists, because they have just backgrounds that lend themselves to the enrichment experience aboard ship. So Smithsonian experts are drawn from a variety of walks of life. I've found every Smithsonian expert that I've been teamed with to be collegial, knowledgeable, and enthusiastic about travel and sharing their experiences on that travel. Marcia and I also had an opportunity once with the Smithsonian to not a cruise, but do a private jet trip around the world.
Oh my goodness.
And those speakers were great as well. And in fact, I've bumped into a few of them over the years from that trip. So it's the Smithsonian has done an excellent job, as have many the institutions that provide curated journeys abroad. But the Smithsonian has done a particularly good job of attracting some excellent talent and making those talented people available aboard their journeys.
Now I'm curious. So the private jet, was there actual presentations, or was this a a a meetup of Smithsonian Journeys experts?
It was actually a combination of both. There were presentations that were made aboard the aircraft. And then when we landed at our stops, we went to 7 different World Heritage sites on this trip. When we landed at various stops and got off the aircraft, we had an opportunity to get lectures from Smithsonian experts who were in country. We got lectures and presentations from Smithsonian experts who came to the hotel where we were staying. So it was quite the experience to have those opportunities. Lectures before we landed, lectures ashore, lectures and guided tours. It was really an excellent package.
Wow. Wow. In terms of questions that passengers uh, it, it- from their questions, what are passengers most keen to learn about?
Passengers that really get hooked, I think, on seeing the places and connecting the history behind the places. So many of the questions that I get, believe it or not, are will we have a chance when we're ashore to see this temple, or will we see this castle, or will we have a chance to see this cathedral? And that's part of the coordination you do ahead of time when you look at the destinations. Many times in my lectures, I'll make mention of a place that's going to be on an upcoming tour. So passengers typically are interested in really getting a fuller understanding of the destinations they're going to be seeing and connecting those destinations to relevant historical facts and historical events that make those destinations and those experiences more meaningful.
Have you run into any controversy with regard to passengers disagreeing with a perspective or pushing back on a perspective?
I think that what's happened in the cruise ship industry in the last several years is that many of the enrichment speakers have been asked to steer away from controversial topics. People aboard the vessels, people who are on cruising, are there to enjoy themselves and not to engage in a debate. Having said that, I have had some very unusual experiences. In fact, I just had one on my last trip. I had given several presentations about Japan, talked a little bit, of course, about World War II and how Japan was able to rebuild itself after World War II, and had a passenger come up to me afterwards and ask me about specific aspects of Japan's post war recovery and wartime experiences because they had been on a
Uh
tour ashore with with a Japanese guide who had a completely different view of the world than I did.
huh.
And it was an absolutely interesting, fascinating conversation with those passengers as they relayed secondhand what that guide had to say and what I was able to share with them previously. So that's one experience I had where I had that disconnect of sorts, and I was able to sort it out with these passengers largely by referring back to some really really definitive guides and definitive works of history and straighten out their understanding. So that was an interesting opportunity, an interesting opportunity. But to get back to your question, I think the cruise ships and the enrichment industry is rightfully avoiding topics these days that can be controversial or in which there's a divergence of opinions. It's just not inside the model that the cruise ship industry wants to offer to engender controversy.
Certainly understandable, but in these, I don't know, divisive times, do you find Do you run into passengers who insist to want to steer things in a political direction?
Many of the times, Paul, that happens outside the presentations.
Okay.
This is conversations we have over dinner, conversations you have having a cup of coffee, those sort of things. And again, as a representative of the cruise ship, as a representative of the ship and the company, you have to be extremely deliberate not to provoke a kind of confrontational conversation. And most of the time, that involves listening respectfully, understanding where the other person is coming from, and steering the conversation away from topics that get heated. And I think most people aboard, as I said, aboard ships are not there to have a controversial conversation or controversial meetups with other passengers. So that I think is something that the industry has done a very good job of steering away from, as you say, especially in times where we have quite a bit of divisiveness politically and controversy over current events. But I think the industry is wise to have done that.
Now, in your talks, you do talk about the ports somewhat that you're going to see, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are your favorite ports?
That's a loaded question. Again, I talked about river cruising. There are some terrific ports in river cruising. Budapest is one of them. I also, again, talking about other great ports, the Port of Lisbon. The Port of Lisbon is just so packed with history that it's impossible not to enjoy it, not to like it. The Manoline architecture that you can see, the Belém Tower, the Monument to Discovery, all of those things harken back to an earlier age, an earlier time when Portugal was on the leading edge of voyages of discovery. So Lisbon has become one of my favorites, and I'm looking forward to going back there soon. The other port that I really enjoyed was an upriver port. Really enjoyed my experience in Buenos Aires.
Okay.
So an upriver port is a terrific, always a terrific opportunity. Once again, you're immersed in the culture, you're immersed in the country, you're on the river. The river is bustling with activity. It's the heartbeat, really, in some places of the country itself. So those are some of my favorite ports, some of my very favorite ports.
Say something about your book,
Ah, ah,
The Counterfeit. I have from time to time I have authors or people who they may not they're not on here because they're authors, but they're on here for their cruise background, but they have often written a book.
well,
So and I've written several books, so I know I suspect I know what you're going through right now because it was recently released, right?
it was, Paul. In fact, The Counterfeit was released in April. It is my first novel. As you well know, all of my other writing has been nonfiction. The articles, the essays, the reviews that I've done over the years have all been nonfiction. So The Counterfeit is my very first novel. It is set in the days soon to come when, after years of failed policies and the terrible consequences of having lost the Pacific War to China, the United States has become both a vanquished and a bankrupted country. The United Nations is now administering the United States. Beijing is pulling the strings, and China wants to make its puppet the next U.S. president.
Wow.
Yes, but ordinary Americans and paroled military officers are beginning to fight back. Their audacious plan is to put one of their own, a spy, into the highest reaches of government. So, Navy Commander Philip Nolan survives the war and captivity as a POW and will take the place of his nearly identical brother as the head of the Internal Security Directorate, which has become an American Gestapo.
That sounds very layered and very fascinating. And in this environment, in this the global political environment we're in, Very timely.
Well, well, thank you. It's the classic geopolitical thriller, Paul. It's got a great many allusions, as you know, given my background to history. Those are woven into this book. And the other interesting thing about the book, you talked about my intelligence background earlier. I make use of a phenomenon in intelligence that intelligence analysts frequently see, and it's called creeping normalcy, where a series of small changes occur over time until a radical change has been effected. So, in the pages of my novel, I gradually introduce the readers to a world that looks very familiar to begin with, but then becomes quite different from the United States they know today by the end of the book.
Well, I read some editorial, some plaudits of the book, especially from people in the what sounds like maybe the security arena. It'll be good in the next few months to see, you get some reviews from, more traditional literary reviewers. That sounds fascinating, and I'd already be thinking about a movie.
Well, Paul, it's very kind of you to mention it. I think it's a book that's very entertaining. I think it's a book that people will enjoy reading and talking about. I hope it promotes some discussion. I've talked about it aboard ship on my enrichment lectures this last cruise, and I had several passengers come up to me and say, "Hey, we ordered a copy of your book," which is very gratifying.
Are you allowed to bring books on the ship?
That's a negotiable item from cruise line to cruise line. There are some cruise lines that would prefer that you not sell merchandise. There are some that allow a limited amount through their gift shop, but it's done on a case by case basis. And I think that's wise of the cruise ships. They they don't bring you on board to hawk your merchandise, so
Right,
to speak.
right.
But if, as I said, I didn't promote my book as part of being an enrichment speaker, I had an opportunity to mention it to people who asked what I had written, if I had any books available. So typically that's how I introduced the book on this past cruise.
Hmm. Well, I know it's recently released, so all the best with it. Tell our listeners how they could get their own copy.
Well, I always tell listeners, Paul, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, that the best place to get a book is at your favorite local bookstore. They are standing on the front lines of what I call freedom of expression and ideas. So always go to your local bookstore first. And then, of course, you can always find it online at Barnes and Noble, at bookshop.org, or Amazon.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about the future, Ralph. What do you have booked as a cruise ship speaker? Maybe listeners might want to get a chance to experience your lectures.
Well, Paul, I'm actually been very fortunate. I've got a pretty full dance card for the remainder of this year and early next year. I'm going to be doing a Smithsonian trip. I'll be the speaker on a trip this September from London to Lisbon. I told you earlier I'm always interested in going to Lisbon. So
Hmm.
I'll be a speaker on that trip as a enrichment speaker for Smithsonian. And then I'll be aboard Vikings.
Now, let me jump in, Ralph.
Yeah,
Is that a cruise?
it is a cruise.
Okay.
It's a
Well,
it's a Ponant cruise.
okay. Okay.
It's a Ponant cruise. So we're going to be on that one, and then we've got in October and early November, I'm going to be aboard Viking Sky for a Mediterranean cruise from Athens to Barcelona.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that should be interesting. And then when the calendar turns in 2027, I'm going to be aboard another Smithsonian Ponant cruise through the Panama Canal and into Costa Rica.
Wow,
So
that's
that's
nice.
what's coming up.
I got to experience the Panama Canal for the first time last year. Amazing, amazing.
It's an incredible work, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Uh, now I want to read a book about, what, that's what happens. I go somewhere and I get exposed to something, and then I want to just immerse myself, learn everything I can about it.
Well, if you want to read about the Panama Canal, I'll recommend McCullough's book, A Path Between the Seas.
A Path Between the Seas.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
McCullough.
McCullough. Okay.
Yeah, great American historian, terrific writer. It's a wonderful book.
Okay. Okay. What about personal travel? What do you have booked? Or do you have anything planned for personal travel?
Well, my personal travel is going to revolve around promoting my book. I'm putting the final touches on a book launch in Chicago, of all places. So we're looking at doing that in July. And that'll be it for me for personal travel this year, largely because of the fact that we've already got this lineup going with both Smithsonian and Viking.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned your wife. Does she like cruising as much as you?
My wife loves to cruise, and we wouldn't think of going anywhere unless we were together.
There you go. There you go. I see that face that you just made, so she must be nearby.
Well, she's sitting right here, and she's sitting right here, and I just winked at her.
Um, uh, so with all of the travel that you've done, both professionally and then after and then your personal travel and then your cruise ship experiences, lecture experiences, you've been to a lot of places. Do you have anything left on your cruising bucket list?
New Zealand is on the bucket list.
New Zealand. Okay.
Yeah, we did last year. We did 40 days in Australia, but did not get to New Zealand. We covered Australia by plane, cruise ship, and by train. So that was quite the experience. So definitely New Zealand is on the list. I would like to go back to Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
And I would definitely like to go this time to the Weddell Sea. And I would even be up for a circumnavigation of Antarctica. Antarctica is just an astonishing place. It's really mesmerizing to be down in those lower latitudes and see Antarctica. So those definitely my bucket list includes New Zealand, Antarctica, and we like to go back to some places too that we've been to on ship and reinvestigate those.
What are you looking most to getting back to?
I would love to go back to Japan and South Korea.
Okay.
I would really enjoy that immensely. The Indonesian archipelago is also on my bucket list.
Alaska,
we enjoyed Alaska immensely. I think maybe the next time we do Alaska, we'd probably want to do it in part with a cruise from Japan, the North Islands of Japan, across the Bering Sea and into Alaska.
Oh my goodness. When you do that one, come back on the show and give us the blow by blow.
Okay, I would be delighted to do that. I would be thrilled to do that.
I had a pretty special cruise when I went to Alaska because we went to Alaska from Hawaii.
Okay.
So that was that was great. I think in that list I told you top 10 all-time cruises, I think that was number 2. And,
okay.
But man, Japan to Alaska sounds even better.
It should be fun. It should be fun.
Well, Ralph, this has been great, but we're not done with you. Before we let you go, we like to ask our guests some light or fun cruise questions. So first one for you is, how do you spend your me time? What do you like to do? You're a golfer? You play chess?
I am a reader.
You're a reader.
My wife will tell you that I am on my best behavior and less likely to get in any kind of trouble when I'm sitting in a corner reading a book.
There you go.
So I like to read. And I told you earlier, I like driving my big old Cadillac around too.
So you still have it?
Oh yeah. I have it here on the island.
Conversation piece.
Oh, it's more than a conversation piece. People love to go for rides in it. We occasionally take it out in a parade. We did the Veterans Day parade last year with the car. So it's a fun automobile to drive.
Do you go to shows and all of that?
Yeah, we have a little show here on the island with our local golf club, and I bring it to that show every year. And Amelia Island, as you may know, is also the first stop on the Concours d'Elegance, which is the vintage car show that travels across the United States.
Okay.
So we have that here on the island. But my car is meant to be driven, not to be put in a showroom. So I like to do that.
All right. Second question, where are you most gratified for having visited?
Absolutely Antarctica. Absolutely Antarctica. They are making some meaningful and important decisions now to restrict the number of ships that go into Antarctic waters. And it's prudent and it makes a lot of sense. So I'm very, very pleased to have been able to get to Antarctica and have the opportunity, moreover, to get in those zodiacs and go ashore. I went ashore in the Antarctic sub-islands. I went ashore on the continent. I hiked 16 miles and climbed 1,300 feet during my time in Antarctica. And it was a remarkable
Oh my
experience.
goodness. You're one of those. Yeah, make me feel self-conscious. But I mean that should be easy stuff for you with your military background.
Well, not necessarily. Paul, I'm getting up here in years now. I'm in my 70s now, so it required a little extra effort at time to do that.
Well, this is an audio podcast, so the listeners there's no way for me to convince the listeners of what I'm about to say because they'll never get to see you except pictures that you send me. But you know, I'll say that there's no way. You don't look like there's any way you're in your 70s. So. So I'll,
you're very kind. The screen must not be showing my gray hair.
No, I am dead serious. So, you should tell everybody that you run into, hey, I'm in my 70s. Okay, next question. What's your favorite cruise drink and cruise food?
What I really enjoy about cruising is an opportunity to sample the regional delicacies and the local food. And many of the cruise ships, as you well know, make it a point to integrate their menus with those local foods. And I really enjoy having that opportunity. Having said that, there is one thing I would warn all of your listeners about. If you go to Iceland, do not eat the fermented shark.
Fermented shark.
Yeah, do not eat the fermented shark. It's a delicacy and an appetizer in Iceland, but I don't particularly care for it and can't recommend it.
It's an acquired taste, huh?
I would say it is, but no, getting back to your question, I really enjoy having the opportunity aboard ship to experience the local foods. And as you know, many of the chefs aboard these cruise ships make it a point to source food locally for parts of the voyage. It's a great opportunity.
Well, my daughter went to Iceland, and she brought me back. I can say this because she's not listening. She doesn't listen to too many of my podcasts. But she went to Iceland and she brought me back. I love anything related to seafood, but these are like some kind of like dried,
dried cod,
dried fish.
Cod.
Okay.
It was dried cod. Yep.
Well,
very popular in Iceland.
Okay. Well, it didn't do it for me.
Well, there's a trick, Paul. The Icelanders eat their dried cod by smearing it with butter.
Okay.
Then they eat it.
well, maybe she should have told me that. I don't know why. For some reason, it reminded me of cat food, and I don't have a cat. So I don't know what cat food is, but it just seemed like something I ought to be feeding to a cat.
Because it was kind of dry and fishy smelling.
But I love fish of almost all kinds, but that just didn't do it. Okay. What about cruise drink? Do you imbibe on a cruise?
Occasionally, I enjoy having a glass of wine with other guests during dinner.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you're on stage on these cruise ships, Paul, and it doesn't pay, frankly, to give the impression that you're a lightweight when it comes to that. Not a lightweight. It's not the wrong word I was looking for. It doesn't pay to give people aboard the cruise ship the impression that you're aboard there simply to drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Ralph, what's your most wonderful or memorable or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
I'd have to say, without question, the most memorable experience occurred on a cruise in Australia, a Ponant cruise ship. We were in a Zodiac off the ship. We were in Collier Bay, Australia, and we went to the fabulous Montgomery Reef. Montgomery Reef is one of the areas in the world that has tremendous tidal exchanges, a 33-foot difference in tide.
Wow.
And when the reef is submerged, of course, you can almost sail across it. But when the tide runs out, the reef is exposed. And one of the things that happens on that reef is these sandbars are exposed. My most memorable experience was landing on a Zodiac on one of those sandbars and walking up and getting a cold glass of chilled champagne while the sun was setting over the reef. That was very memorable.
I can just picture it.
It was incredible. You're in the open ocean. The sun is setting. You're on a sandbar surrounded by water, and you're toasting the sunset. It was great.
That sounds like a great point to bring our program to an end. It has been wonderful talking to you, Ralph. I'm going to have you back on. I've already given you one sort of landmark cruise, the one from Japan to Alaska, but you do so many amazing things. You know, sometime in 26, early 27, give me a holler and just say, hey, I just did this. And whatever this is, I suspect it's going to be worthy of me wanting you to put you back on the show.
Well, I tell you, Paul, you are very kind. I've enjoyed this immensely. It's delightful to have you as a host and having had this opportunity to chat with you and all your listeners.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast and providing listeners with a perspective that few of us are aware of. All the best to you in your future endeavors. And as I like to say, we'll see you on the ocean.
Goodbye, Paul.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99 can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the three books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.